Josiah, have you heard about the executions in Arizona?
Yeah, I've heard a little bit about them.
So I'm just gonna start out from pretty much the beginning. But since 1910, Arizona has carried out 100 executions. The first one to use lethal gas was in 1934, and it became the most common method of execution until 1975. The Florence State Prison, which is where executions take place, was built in 1908 and is still used today.
Out of all the people executed, 23 were hung, 37 killed by lethal gas, and the rest were killed by lethal injection. Some of these methods were really cruel, like when they built a trap door underneath the hangings, so after the prisoner was hung, the body would drop through the trap door and fall onto the ground.
But in a more humane way, Arizona has done more lethal injections than any other state since 1992. Right now, there are 111 people on death row waiting for their executions. Arizona is one of the few states that still has gas chambers, which has been used in the past to execute prisoners. However, it hasn't been used since 1999.
Arizona got a lot of negative attention after a botched execution of Joseph Rudolph Wood in 2014. He was given a lethal injection, but instead of dying quickly, he spent over 2 hours coughing and choking in front of witnesses. This failure raised a lot of questions about how the state carries out executions.
In 1992, Arizona made lethal injections its main method of execution, hoping it would be more humane. Whenever there's an execution in Arizona, people from all over the world start talking about the death penalty. Legal experts, human rights activists, and even regular people question whether it's fair or not.
Although Arizona hasn't had any confirmed cases of wrongful executions, there's no way to be completely sure. Before Arizona became a state in 1912, executions were done by counties, and most of them used hanging as their main way of execution.
But after Arizona became a state, executions were centralized at Florence State Prison. There have been several cases where evidence was questionable or unreliable, and people worry that someone will and could be wrongfully executed.
The first execution of a woman in Arizona happened in 1930. She was hung, but something went horribly wrong. Her head was severed during the execution, which led to the change in methods. After that, gas chambers and later lethal injection were used as their main method.
Gas chambers were considered more humane method than hanging, but after a while they were still criticized for being inhumane. The last execution by gas chamber was in 1999. After the botched execution of Joseph Wood in 2014, the state paused executions as a whole.
But in May 2022, after an 8-year break, Arizona executed Clarence Dixon using lethal injection. 2 other executions took place that year, Frank Atwood in June and Murray Hooper in November. These executions sparked more debate about the fairness of the death penalty.
In 2023, Governor Katie Hobbs put a stop to executions as a whole again because of concerns about whether the state was ready to carry them on properly. The execution process is being reviewed, and it is expected that executions won't restart until 2025.
This shows that even after years of using the death penalty, Arizona is still figuring out the best way to carry out executions and deal with the criticism.
So, Josiah, what do you think about executions in Florence and Arizona as a whole?
I think that sometimes they can be very useful, but sometimes it would be nice to just not have the death penalty because it's a lot worse than just going to prison for your life, and you can't really undo it. So if somebody is wrongfully executed, it's just a mistake that can't be undone. What about you?
I kind of agree with you about how it can't be undone. So, like, as we said earlier, about their technology wasn't where we're at today. So say if somebody got wrongfully, had a wrongful trial, or their information wasn't right, and they were later found not guilty, they couldn't do anything about them because they were executed. Unlike if they were put on the they were put in jail till death. So I think that if the technology we have today is good, that executions could be and should be in place for those that have committed a crime that is really bad. But other than that, I think that just the death penalty in prison should be good enough for prisoners and